In a town that lay shrouded in perpetual twilight, where shadows loomed larger than life and whispers of the past echoed in the wind, there existed an ancient train station, a dilapidated remnant of a time long forgotten. Its once glorious architecture now lay in disarray, with crumbling bricks and shattered glass that reflected the ghostly glow of the moon. The townsfolk spoke in hushed tones about the midnight train, a spectral entity that appeared at the stroke of midnight, bound to an endless cycle of despair. The legend of the midnight train was one that both fascinated and terrified the townspeople. They said it was a train that never truly departed, a harbinger of nightmares that took passengers on a journey into their darkest fears. Few dared to approach the station, but for those who did, the allure of the unknown was often too strong to resist. Among the curious was a young woman named Clara. She was new to the town, having moved there seeking solace from her turbulent past, a past filled with heartbreak and loss. Clara had heard whispers about the midnight train. Though her rational mind warned her to steer clear, her curiosity gnawed at her. On a fateful night, the moon full and luminous, she found herself standing at the entrance of the old train station, heart racing with an unsettling mix of dread and anticipation. The clock struck midnight, and the air grew heavy with an unnatural stillness. Clara could hear the faint sound of a whistle, a mournful note drifting through the night, sending chills down her spine. As if on cue, the midnight train emerged from the darkness, its headlights cutting through the shadows like a predator stalking its prey. The train was a haunting sight, an amalgamation of rust and decay, yet it exuded an otherworldly beauty that beckoned her closer. Clara hesitated, her feet rooted to the ground. Memories of her past flashed before her eyes, images of loved ones lost, regrets unspoken, and fears that clawed at her soul. But the train's doors swung open, an invitation that felt irresistible. With a deep breath, she stepped aboard, unaware that she was crossing a threshold from which there would be no return. Inside the train, the atmosphere was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the rhythmic clattering of wheels against the tracks. Clara found herself seated in a dimly lit compartment, the air stale and cold. The walls were adorned with faded photographs, their subjects long forgotten, their eyes seemingly watching her every move. As the train lurched forward, she felt a deep sense of unease wash over her, as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling around her. With each passing moment, Clara's surroundings began to shift. The train no longer moved through the familiar landscape of the town. Instead, it plunged into a surreal realm where shadows danced and twisted, morphing into grotesque figures that whispered her name. The train's interior warped, stretching and contracting, as if it were alive, breathing, pulsating with a malevolent energy. Clara's heart raced as she glanced out the window, desperate to find a familiar landmark. But the scenery was a nightmarish blur, a cacophony of swirling colors and distorted shapes. Panic set in as she realized that she was trapped in a loop.
Ow.
The train hurtling down a track that seemed to lead nowhere, yet everywhere at once. Suddenly, Clara's compartment door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside, a man dressed in a tattered suit, his face obscured by shadows. He exuded an aura of sorrow and despair, his eyes reflecting a depth of pain that resonated with Clara's own. "You're not alone," he whispered, his voice barely above a murmur. "We are all passengers on this train, bound by our fears." Clara felt an inexplicable connection to the man, as if he understood her in ways no one else could. But the comfort of his presence was short-lived, for the train began to shake violently, throwing her against the window. Outside, the landscape morphed again, revealing glimpses of her past, her childhood home, the hospital where she lost her mother, the moment her heart was shattered by betrayal. Each scene played out like a cruel reminder of her failures and regrets. "Stop it," Clara screamed, pressing her palms against the glass, desperate to block out the memories. But the train only accelerated, plunging deeper into the abyss of her psyche. The man reached out, his hand brushing against hers, a fleeting gesture of empathy. "You must confront them," he urged. "Only then can you escape." But Clara felt paralyzed by fear, trapped in a cycle of guilt and sorrow. The train screeched to a halt, plunging them into darkness. The lights flickered, and Clara found herself alone in the compartment. The man vanished as if he had never existed. Panic surged within her as she realized that the train was not just a vessel. It was a manifestation of her innermost demons, The compartment transformed once more, the walls closing in as she was engulfed by the shadows of her past. Faces materialized in the darkness, her mother's loving smile, her father's disappointed gaze, the friends who had turned their backs on her. Each visage tormented her, their voices melding into a cacophony of accusations and lamentations. "You're a failure!" they cried. "You'll never escape!" Clara collapsed to the floor, overwhelmed by the weight of their judgment. The train lurched forward, and she felt the cold grip of despair tightening around her throat. Just when she thought she might succumb to the darkness, a glimmer of light appeared in the distance, a flicker of hope that ignited a spark within her. With renewed determination, Clara rose to her feet, pushing back against the shadows that threatened to consume her. "I won't let you win," she shouted, her voice echoing through the compartment. The train responded to her defiance, shaking violently as if it were alive, the walls trembling with the force of her conviction. As she fought against the darkness, the man reappeared, his expression filled with understanding. "You can break free," he said, his voice steady amidst the chaos. "Face your fears and the train will release you." Clara's heart raced as she summoned the courage to confront the faces of her past. One by one, she faced her demons, the disappointment, the heartache, the guilt. With each confrontation, the shadows began to recede, their grip loosening as she found a sense of closure. Tears streamed down her face as she let go of the pain that had haunted her for so long. And then, in an instant, the train came to a halt. The compartment was engulfed in brilliant light, and Clara felt a rush of warmth envelop her, washing away the remnants of her fears. The man smiled, a look of pride shining in his eyes. "You've done it," he said softly. "You've broken the cycle." As the light enveloped her, Clara felt a profound sense of peace. The train began to dissolve, the compartments fading into the ether, leaving her standing alone in the moonlit station. The air was crisp and fresh, and for the first time in years, she felt truly free. But just as she began to step away from the station, a chilling realization struck her. She could hear the distant sound of a whistle. The midnight train was still out there, waiting for its next passenger. Clara turned back, glancing at the shadows that lingered at the edges of the station. Knowing that the train would always exist as a reminder of the darkness she had faced, yet she also understood that she had the power to choose. The midnight train would no longer hold her captive. With a newfound strength, she stepped away from the station, leaving behind the echoes of her past and embracing the promise of a brighter future. And so, the midnight train remained a specter of the night, eternally bound to the stories of those who dared to board. A testament to the inescapable journey of confronting one's fears and the strength that lies within. But Clara knew that true liberation could only be found by those brave enough to face the darkness head-on. As she walked away, the moon shone brightly overhead, casting a silver glow on the path ahead, a path of hope, healing, and the possibility of redemption. The midnight train would always be a part of her story, but it would no longer define her. And with each step she took, the shadows grew fainter, the whispers quieter, till all that remained was the promise of a new dawn.